Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for a poetry discussion, but it's a poetry discussion that will take place in three separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, the poetry discussion playlist, of course, which is quickly approaching 100 videos. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I'm proud of the fact that we've discussed 100 poems here, nearly 100 poems here on the channel. I think that one of my goals in starting this channel was to increase dialogue around poetry, and I think I am doing my part in that battle. Number two will be the National Poetry Month 2021 playlist here on the channel. I am doing a poetry discussion every day in the month of April here on the channel in order to celebrate National Poetry Month in 2021. Just real quick here, while I've breached the subject, where are we at? Mondays for Langston Hughes, Tuesdays for Sylvia Plath, Wednesdays for Charles Bukowski, Thursdays for Emily Dickinson, Fridays again for Bukowski, and Saturdays for Robert Frost, Sundays proving to be a wild card throughout the month. The poem in question today is My Garden, from What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire, which is the third playlist in which this poetry discussion will appear here on the channel. My garden reads as such: in the sun and in the rain, and in the day and in the night, pain is a flower. Pain is flowers, blooming all the time. Woof. I didn't expect it to go there when I very first started reading this poem, but it did. It went someplace fairly dark. But I think what's going on here is our poet speaking, not a speaker speaking. I do not believe that this poem is filtered through any type of character. I do not believe that this poem is filtered through any type of larger dialogue. I think that what is going on here is we have a message straight from the heart of old Chucky Buck himself, Charles Bukowski, telling us the simple sort of explanation here is that pain is something, the pains in life are things that we have to cherish as well as the good times. We have to keep around these ornamental bad things in order that we remember them. But I think more directly, when coming from the mouth of a poet, what we're doing here, especially a poet who dabbles in the ideas in which Bukowski dabbles, what we're doing is we are sort of channeling the fact that these poems that Charles Bukowski writes, they don't come from the good days. They don't come from the happy times. These poems are not simply seeded with the bad moments. These poems are manifestations of the bad times. It is sort of like people say, grass is always greener on the other side. But Chris Cornell said the grass is always greener where the dogs are shitting. And that can be a very powerful tool with which to observe life. Not simply that the bad things are going to happen and there will be a tomorrow. Not simply that this too shall pass. Those reminders are passive. This too shall pass. Passive enough. The good times will come again. Passive enough. To say that pain is a flower, pain is flowers blooming all the time, is a weaponization of the struggles of life. A weaponization of the struggles of life in a fashion that is to say, yeah, things are going to suck. In fact, probably right now, there's some things that suck. But we're not just going to get through them. We will cherish them. Pain is flowers blooming all the time. The sort of, I don't want to call it ironic thing. I don't think it's ironic. The special thing, maybe, about this poem is that I can't think of a different poet from whom this poem could come. If I think of any of my Emily Dickinson poems, maybe they could have come through the pen in a different format of Shakespeare or John Donne. When I think of Shakespeare's poetry, you have a lot of contemporaries from whom those things could have come. Shakespeare, the thing about Shakespeare is you almost have to project him through a future poet as opposed to anyone at his time. When I think about, what is his name? I've got a collection from him because it was on clearance. Where is it here? Billy, what's his name? Billy Collins could have come through the pen of any fifth grader you've ever met. When you think of William Blake's poetry, it would not have shocked me if Emily Dickinson's emo heart went through another deeper, darker emo phase, whereby she named herself William Blake. That would not surprise me. So all of these different poets, you can sort of see basically any of the poems that they write, obviously transmutated, right? You're not going to get Shakespeare like Shakespeare through Emily Dickinson. But this poem and this message, I'm sure there's another poet out there from whom this could have come, but I don't know them. I don't know that poet. The closest one that I could think of would be Sherman Alexie, but his poetry doesn't look like this. His poetry, at least from what I've read. So that sentiment might come from Sherman Alexie, but I don't know that the stunning grace with which this poem happens, which is, I mean, look at the poem itself. Let's see here. Just looking at it, just look at the visual. I know you can't read it because it's too small and it's backward. That is the poem 2 poems ago. Here's the previous poem, Igloo. Or no, I guess that's 2 removed. 3 removed, 2 removed. The last poem. And then here's my garden. Right there. Boom, boom, boom. A pair of couplets in a single line reflecting the title itself. So, in this fashion, in this way, the title, My Garden, just means my collection. This book is my garden. This garden, this book is a garden because it is a collection of my flowers being the poems which are plucked directly from the bad times, not the good times. It almost, here's what I want to know. I'm going to read the poem one more time. In the sun and in the rain, and in the day and in the night, pain is a flower, pain is flowers, blooming all the time. Do we need that first stanza, in the sun and in the rain, and in the day and in the night? I don't know. I am tempted to say that it does in some way set a precedent for putting our minds in the place of forever, right? It puts us outside, setting the stage for a garden, but that is set with the title, My Garden. So could this poem read, pain is a flower, pain is flowers blooming all the time. Could it do that? Could it be that minimalist and still get his point across? I don't know. I am tempted to say yes. I am tempted to say that that first stanza, that first couplet, actually detracts from the poem. I'm tempted to say that. But also, when reading this poem, pain is a flower, pain is flowers blooming all the time, that might be a little too pretentious. So, would it be helpful if that opening stanza, that opening couplet, were something different altogether? If it were not there, or should it stand as it is? I am tempted to say we could nix both of those lines, and this poem would be more powerful, would be, in fact, semi-Ezra Poundish. That is all I have for this poetry discussion, which will again exist in 3 separate playlists here on the channel. The first being Poetry Discussions, the second being National Poetry Month 2021, and the third being a poem-by-poem read-through of What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire. I have new videos on the channel at least Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are for poetry, but this month, every day is for poetry, but Mondays, always are for poetry. I also have 3 videos every week, most weeks. I can't say every. Preparing for this screwed me up pretty good. But I also have 3 videos on my personal channel, a link to which can be found in the description below.